Throughout this conference, we've been talking about anti-racism and youth development, as well as generational poverty and breaking the cycles of generational poverty with youth and families, and prioritizing mental health, inclusion, and the amplification of diverse voices is an essential component of successful social movements and the true embodiment of practice with youth. We will be moving into our closing panel discussion today, and joining us today we have Haifa from Tracy Social Justice and Érica from the Pride Center of San Antonio to talk about mental health as it relates to anti-racism and generational poverty. We will spend the first 45 minutes doing our Q&A, and then at the end have a 15-minute, we'll spend the first 45 minutes doing our panel, and then at the last 15 minutes will be a Q&A. So if you have any questions throughout, please submit them in the chat box. Now I will let both of our panel participants introduce themselves, their agencies, and mission to you all. Érica, would you like to begin?
Hi, my name is Érica Alcocer. I work at the Pride Center located in San Antonio, Texas, and we are serving the greater south of Texas. If you all know, Texas is really big. Our mission is just really to support LGBTQ plus folks, our allies, folks who have HIV, and really just be proponents in the community to support folks have access to mental health resources, all sorts of resources, basic need resources, and just connecting community members and organizations with each other so that we can have a stronger coalition of LGBTQ plus affirming folks.
Thank you so much for your lovely introduction. And Haifa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you to everyone for being here. My name is Haifa Admed. I am from Tracy, California. I am the co-founder and vice president of Tracy Social Justice. We're a youth-led organization here in my city of Tracy, where we just hope to create positive change in the community directly with the youth. So we're mainly focused on if there's anything that the youth that bring to light, like food poverty, just homelessness in our area, racial discrimination, they can bring it onto us. And as the youth, we want to create a platform for everyone to work together for positive change.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Haifa and Érica. So let's get started with the panel. As you know, today our focus of our conference has really been about anti-racism and generational poverty in youth development. It's essential to incorporate an intersectional lens and cultural humility in working with youth. So how can professionals and community leaders apply a social and racial justice lens to their work with marginalized groups and youth? And either of you can go first. It doesn't matter. It's a discussion. So whichever would like to start is fine.
I can go if that's okay with you. Yes. Okay, Haifa, thank you. So I really just want to say thank you all so much for being here, and thank you for these questions. I already told Shaylin that I think these are all amazing questions to really activate how we weave social and racial justice practices, which ultimately I hope our goal is like liberation, like Black liberation, queer liberation, trans liberation, into your practice, into your praxis, into your events, your guidelines. I want to say, like, be loud with it, be vocal about it. You know, sometimes I think we have to use coded language for folks to feel comfortable, but I've really wanted to focus in stepping into being loud so that people can hear the message. Those who are really working in that same practice and praxis and have those same guidelines and guiding principles, they're going to find you when they see your event. They're going to find you through your organization and how you represent those principles. And just be excited about it. Really bring that energy, because honestly, this work is tireless, and this work has been going on for generations of resistance. So I think it's important to like really approach with an energetic approach if you can, because let's be honest, we have to find some excitement. We have to find the appeal in dismantling systems of oppression, and that can look different based on who you're centering, youth, right? So where youth stand in their social and racial justice, I think it's good to meet them where they're at, and then know that the vision is is in the future and make folks excited about that's where we're headed. And things you can do are like trainings, workshops, asking the people that you're working with, especially the youth, hearing their ideas, helping them carve those ideas and mold them into realities.
Thank you so much. Haifa.
Yeah, wow, Érica really killed that one. But again, yeah, thank you for having me here. I'm truly honored for you guys giving me a platform to speak. So in my experience working with professional and community leaders, there seems to be a disconnect with the youth that they work with, serve, and interact with. It could be a disconnect of socioeconomic status, race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, and sexual identity. A way that professional and community leaders can apply social and racial justice lens to their work is to directly include marginalized youth in the work from start to finish. This means that professional and community leaders are willing to listen to the youth and take in their input with every step of the project. Another big thing that professional and community leaders must do to apply this racial and social justice lens is to learn the history of racial discrimination in America, classism in America, and LGBTQ plus discrimination in America. Once you understand how marginalized groups view the world around them and vice versa, you are then able to create change based on that assures that it's going to be true change and it's going to be also long lasting.
Yes. I totally agree. Those suggestions are so important. And following that, I think self-awareness of our own biases and weaknesses is the cornerstone of ethical practice when working with youth. My next question for you all is, what microaggressions and implicit biases do people need to be aware of when working with BIPOC, LGBT youth, impoverished communities, marginalized communities, and how can those individuals and communities address the harm that implicit bias causes? Érica, would you like to start for us?
Sure. And phew, that is that is a really intense question. And I thought a lot about it because as a queer trans person of color, I think seeing those microaggressions have them happen to me as well. And of course, for all the BIPOC folks here, I think part of it is decentering settler ego is a practice that I taught and then learned from. And to really put it simply without like elaborating so much is really removing yourself when the harm happens and saying it happened, but let's not center me because I did the harm. And sometimes over centering who you're harming can make folks feel a certain type of way as well. So it's really about finding the balance between, situations and harm is going to happen when we're working alongside each other to create change and to create the spaces needed for liberation. But healing can happen too. And I think learning how that you're always going to make mistakes. We're always going to make mistakes. People of all races and genders are capable of creating harm to each other and to ourselves. And so it's really important that we learn the tools to heal and to allow other people the space for healing. And so like I said, decentering ego is just saying, I'm sorry that, and I apologize. Please let me know if there's anything I can do immediately or later on to support you, and I will consistently work on that, and then keep that word of working in it. And I think that's why we're all here, is because we're committed to keeping on and keeping working and making sure these patterns of microaggressions that can turn into abuse, that can turn into bigger harms and violence, we kind of take care of that as a community, and that we have the support system to help each other on that way with compassion, I think.
Haifa, how do you feel like how do you feel like microaggressions and implicit biases can cause harm in the communities, and what do we need to be aware of?
I think the majority of people have implicit biases that translates into microaggression. From personal experience, it could be as little as like the point of view of Black hair. I remember when we would be wearing afros in school, something that, it's fluffy. And to them, to many people, it seems like, it's just a compliment of hair, and touching the hair and calling it names. It just seems like it's fun and no harm. But yet it's very much harm. And so a lot of like what Érica said, you must take this a step back and understand that what you did truly affected that person, and learn to apologize and just learn how to next time not do it again. But it's very important for someone to understand what they did wrong in order to fix it. Because a lot of the times I just see that people just say sorry because the world is calling them out and not truly listen and understand what they actually did to begin with. I think microaggression comes from the individual and society being uneducated and at times ignorant about the realities that BIPOC, LGBTQ plus youth, and impoverished women and children face. When one is in those spaces, you must come in with an understanding that your point of view of the world is different. As an individual, you can address this harm by educating yourself about the harmful stereotypes, addressing the implicit biases that you may have individually, and always come in with a positive outlook. And as a community, we can address this harm through mass education in the classrooms, professional settings, and personal spaces. And most importantly, hold each other accountable for true change. Not cancel culture, but actually holding each other accountable for true change and giving each other the space to change. I think that's the most important thing, is giving people around us the space to actually change and not just immediately canceling them. And that's the end of that.
Wonderfully said. I think there's a lot to unpack there. Thing I thought about when people address like their implicit bias or what they didn't know that they were doing something that was offensive. Sometimes it gets into like over apologizing, and then it can make the situation really uncomfortable. Have any thoughts on that?
I've seen it happen where like they immediately go into over apologizing, because it happened to me. And at the moment I'm just like, it's like, okay, it's cool. It's no problem. Just know that next time don't do it. That's all. Like I think a lot of us ask for with with microaggression and implicit biases is you made a mistake once, learn from it, and the next time don't repeat it again, because that's all we ask for, is to be seen and treated equally as everyone else. If a comment harmed me, I will tell you, but then you also need to take the steps to apologize, of course, and then also learn what you did wrong, so next time it's not repeated.
Is learning not so much that you just did something harmful, but why it was harmful. So it goes back to like really, and not just learning, but unlearning. So there's an unlearning, right, to that compliment giving, of wanting to compliment. Oh, I love, like, it's just like, oh, let's find other ways to compliment each other, other ways to compliment our youth, so that we're not having a microaggression happen when we're trying to say something positive. Because there's really good ways to give positive reinforcement to our youth, to our BIPOC youth, and to each other without making it about your race or ethnicity, your class. You got to be creative, and I believe that we can do it. And it's really about seeing the person who they are as a whole, seeing a person outside of this, the biases that we hold. It's a part of unlearning, and it doesn't just happen once. It happens over and over and over again, because they're constantly a reinforcement of colonization, of heteronormative views, of very white pathologized views. And so it's about unlearning that for all of us, I think.
Absolutely. That is so well said. And to echo what you both said, I think that one thing that we should all really try to take away from this conversation is the importance of humility and avoiding defensiveness. And as Érica said, the why is so essential, because I know that there have been times where you may have heard that something offended someone on, in the news or in a personal conversation or whatever, and you might not always be sure exactly why that was offensive. So really pushing yourself and challenging yourself. If I don't understand why, then that's something I need to do research on. That's something that I need to learn more information about, because whether or not it makes sense to me in the moment, and regardless of intention, we don't get to decide what hurts someone else. And that empathy has to remain at the core of our professionalism, because the damage that you can do to people by choosing to say, well, I don't agree with that, that's offensive, that doesn't make sense to me, is just immeasurable to an extent when we choose that callousness versus that just perspective of, I always want to learn because the goal is to help. and the goal is to uplift, and the goal is to be a positive change, not to cause more harm and more damage. We all make mistakes, and as Haifa and Érica both said, there's going to be times where you may do or say something that you shouldn't, but taking that feedback and really internalizing it and taking it as a challenge to do better moving forward is so important, for sure. Can you please explain the difference for our audience between being an ally and an advocate, and what can help move us from passive support to actions that actually create sustainable change?
I think, for me, the word like ally didn't come into light until like the racial reckoning that started last year, the summer of last year. And then I think after that, everyone started using it. And I don't think a lot of people know what that entails. I think an ally is someone who stands with marginalized communities in their fight. So I think that's what an ally is, but an advocate is someone who fights with their side for change in the long term. So an ally is just someone that shares that common interest of like, yes, Black lives do matter. Yes, white privilege does exist in our communities, and just agreeing with those things. But an advocate is someone that fights to dismantle systematic oppression, fights to dismantle the oppressive systems that we have in America. Anyone can be an ally, but the ones that actually fight, those are the advocates. Passive support can shift to actual change through someone actually staying in that for the long term. I think passive support was the biggest thing that we saw in the summer of last year. Everyone posted the Black Square, everyone posted the information and stuff like that. But 2-3 months later, all of that was gone. To this day, you don't see that much involvement like you saw last summer. And I think that's because everyone was an ally, but not an advocate. I think changing from passive to actual change is you sticking with that till the end. And a lot of us talk about that change isn't coming like a month, 2 weeks. It can take years. It's taking generations for us to achieve change. So stick with it. Days are going to be dark, I know, and it gets very lonely in this fight, but know that there's a community out there fighting the same fight as you, and just stick to it day by day. And that's how we turn it from passive change from passive support to actual sustainable change.
I just want to let that just sit in for a second, honestly. Honestly. Thank you so much. I've actually heard this question be asked a lot, and I've heard it answered differently by different folks saying, well, advocate and ally doesn't matter, it's the action. But I really like what Haifa said. And to quote Audre Lorde, the master's tools will not dismantle the master's house. So what do you have in your toolbox to dismantle the master's house? How are we using it sustainably? Honestly, I think that's for me. Are you a white ally? Are you a non-Black person of color ally? And what are we doing that it's sustainable? Like, what is your location in the movement? What are your skills, and how can you offer them to the best of your capability and capacity? Because once you burn out, we have to have a system and a network to tap someone else in, because burnout is going to happen. It is going to get tough. It is going to be hard. And one person cannot create change. It's a mobilization of folks. It's a mobilization of movements and actions rooted in solidarity. And now we don't all have to be on the same exact page of what the horizon of liberation looks like, because I know that my probably super radical thinking is different than the organization I work for, and is different than maybe Haifa, and is maybe different than everybody here. But I know who I'm centering in my community. I know that I'm not centering myself, because I know that once Black liberation happens, once Indigenous land is given back, that I will be liberated as well. So I think it's really important for us to understand that whether you call yourself an advocate or an ally, or whether your work is donating the funds, or donating your time, or donating your skills, or ride sharing, or letting someone use your account to watch something, that's self-care, that's rest, that's offering a resources that person maybe may not have had access to. So whatever way you're willing to do it, and then see, how can I give more? How can this be sustainable so that I can offer more? Because it's not about, oh, I'm an ally, and like really amplifying that. It's just about getting in and making sure that we can find that mobilization for everybody to have that capacity to be rooted in solidarity for each other.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. I think that what Haifa mentioned about making sure that that follow through is there for the long haul is so important to keep in mind, because just supporting something in theory and sharing some memes is good, but that's not what's actually going to lead to policy changes. That's not what's actually going to lead to real systemic change that needs to happen. And I love what you said, Érica, about utilizing your own individual strengths and skills and your sphere of influence as an individual and trying to build on that so that what you're doing is realistic, because burnout is so common in this field. And on that note, I'd like to ask both of you if you could just share a few things that you personally have found to be helpful when you're facing those feelings of burnout. Because when we're dealing in racial and social justice, there are so many times where the things going on around us, it's devastating, it's frustrating, it's hard. And so there are times where those waves of doubt or burnout, or however that you want to put it and however long it might last, really can affect us as professionals. What are some things that you have found to be helpful when you feel that discouragement? Haifa, would you like to go first?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for that really good question. I'm gonna answer it with like a story and then leading into that to my answer. So I remember like a few months after everything that happened last summer, me and a couple of my friends who were doing self-care packets and organizing protests and like giving speeches, we were like hopped on a little meeting and we were like, how do we feel after this? Like after what we did in the summer? And all of us said the same thing. It was guilt. We were all women of color fighting for something that we didn't even create, but we just had to fight for solely because of the color of our skin and the world and because of the socioeconomic class that we live in. So we had this burden on us we didn't even ask for, but we still had to fight for it. And so one of the biggest things before we left the meeting, we were like, why are we feeling so guilty? We didn't ask for this problem and yet we're solving it. And when no one else was helping us, we had to advocate, we had to organize by ourselves. And I remember that month of June and July, we were every single day on the go, running around. And then by August, we were exhausted. We felt like no one was listening to us. No one was actually helping us. We thought we weren't doing the right thing at a certain point. And then we all just looked at ourselves and we were like, this isn't right. I think we all expected change to happen so fast because we were doing so much at the time, not understanding that change can occur without you taking care of yourself first. I think burnout is so common. And once that occurs to a lot of people, that's when they just stop. They think that the world isn't helping me, so why should I care? I'm just going to worry about myself and and that's okay. And that's fine. But if you truly want to be in this for the long haul, I think take time for yourself and don't be so hard on yourself. Like Érica said, one person can't change the world. So don't put that responsibility onto yourself. Take the time, take a week, if it even means a month, and just, take care of yourself, like read a book, go out. Just don't let it consume you because it gets really dark at certain points. And so just that self-care and talking with people, like family members, friends, about how you feel and about the burnout that you feel. And I think that can really help out.
True. Burnout is totally real, and life under capitalism makes us feel guilty about resting, and makes us feel guilty about what it means to do nothing, what it means to do absolutely just nothing. And so I think as a person who has had to balance traumatic personal experiences with traumatic professional experiences, world experiences, we're in a pandemic still. I still believe that. I know that to be true. It's a moment to just look at reality and say these systems have been oppressing us for well over 500 years, right? It's like that's the reality of this giant situation. And we are making progress, and we should celebrate that. We should find satisfaction in joy and pleasure, especially if you're a queer person of color, a Black trans person. It's like that is that is it. That is what we get. We get to really savor that, and also be mindful and be intentional about community care, right? So, like I said, creating that chain of care is, say, yes, you've been going hard like Haifa and all the incredible community work you're doing, and you need a break, but you don't want to see the community work stop. That's okay. Find and build that network where you can say, I'm going to need to take a week off for myself. And would it be okay for so-and-so to step in, and maybe I'll come back when I have the capacity, and not feeling guilty about that? That's a practice. It's a practice, because we're only human and we have these human emotions, and we're going to feel like FOMO. I'm the fear of missing out. I'm missing something. You're resting your body, you're resting your mind, you're resting your soul, and nourish it with your ancestral practices, with however you feel the need to really shake that feeling of and pressure of, I got to change the world tomorrow.
It's a lot of pressure to put on one person. You all said it very well. To take a step back and to focus on yourself, and doing that can help you heal, like as a whole person, not just to get energy to go back out and advocate and make change in your community again, but your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health and well-being. There's a quote out there. It's like, you have to help yourself in order to help others. And I think that I also always think about how, like, we have a plate. Everyone has their own plate, and you can put as much stuff on your plate as you can handle at once. And some people's plates are different sizes as well. Some people can have a really big plate, and they can put a lot on their plate. And then others, maybe their plate is a little bit smaller and they can only handle a little bit at a time. And Érica, to go back to your point about capitalism sometimes makes us feel guilty about resting and taking some time off. I would love both of your opinions on or thoughts on this, but I like other countries, they have like more paid time off or different maternity leaves than the United States of America does. And I think how can we get to that point? What policy change can we get to the point where the stigma of focusing on your mental health and rest time can change?
Have y'all heard of what is it called? LLC Twitter? Maybe there's this I'm gonna just throw this out there, but there's this like notion of like rise and grind, wake up at 5 a.m. And so it's really mindful to think that a lot of these things are rooted in ableism and in capitalism, and not everyone has the resources to do all of these things, and so it's important, I think, to take that step back and recognize that rest is an act of resistance, and we all deserve rest, and some of us can't get it as readily as we need. So when we do take that rest, I like I put in the chat, I think when you heal, the community heals.
I really like what you said about taking a break as an act of resistance. I never heard of that, but I really like that. But I think what you were referring to, and that's what I was going to bring up too, is hustle culture that is so prominent in like our world today, and especially like for like people my age, like Gen Z. It's like wake up at 4 a.m. You go to bed at 9, and you wake up the next day, gym. So you want to be a millionaire, right? Like you want no breaks. Like my friend is, I'm 28 and I'm like a billionaire. My friend isn't. Like that's the difference. It's very much like you take a break, you're 10 steps behind already. And I think that, and again, like the fear of missing out, is people are scared. Like, yeah, like what if I do take a break today and my friends are out here doing like better things, and you just like are scared that you're going to be stuck in the same place that you are right now, like for the next like for the rest of your life. And that's very much an American thing, because I'm from Sudan, a country in Africa, and it just like, or even like in the Middle East, there's no such thing as that. People still work, people still, like they hustle and stuff, but they also take great like honor and great privilege in taking a break. going to sleep, going out with friends, that's not a shameful thing. And I think it's really highlighted in American culture through social media. Like when you see your friends posting about things, you start to worry and you start to go like, oh my God, I have to do this, 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 and this, and this. And it's even more highlighted in how capitalism works. Like you go to work and you request a week off. They look at you like, oh, a week off, really? Or like they like don't give you that raise and stuff. So and the competitiveness of capitalism plays a big part in people, like they don't want to miss out on life, basically. And one of the ways I think we can tackle it is, like Érica said, being like taking care of yourself, like taking that rest and not feeling guilty about it. Because yeah, you want to do this hustle culture, but you're only 21, so you're only 25 once in your life. Do you want to, like, in the next 10 years say that, oh, all I was doing when I was at that age is work? I think just taking that break and teaching yourself that it's okay to do it too. Like, it's not your fault. You're not doing anything wrong when you're taking this break. I think it's hard because I'm trying to do that right now too, but it's crucial. It's really crucial. It's really crucial in our life.
Thank you. I think this topic is so interesting to me because I am that person that never stops working and doesn't know how to take a break. And I think there's some hope and light into more balance in life. I have hope that this next like generation, it's not Generation Z, it's like the one after that, starts to, I feel like I've seen thus far taking care of themselves more and making sure there's more balance in their life and standing up for the what they want and at least in the workplace, and seeking out resources for increasing their mental and physical and emotional health. I guess that kind of leads into my next question for you all, is regarding resources for mental health outreach, and how marginalized groups statistically have a higher need for mental health resources, but however, statistically have less access to resources. What do you feel like can be done to address this and to help create opportunities for those who need it the most?
I said really make efforts to fund therapists of color, fund Black therapists, fund future Black therapists. And as someone who's a mental health advocate and I love therapy. Therapy is great. I also want to recognize that some of our feelings and our rage is going to have to be healed through liberation and through community work towards that liberation. So I want to always be mindful that I think I saw that somewhere on Instagram that yes, therapy is great, but weighing like the solution to what we're really talking about, which is like radical change in these systems that are just not necessarily broken because they're working as intended, but not serving us. And I don't think going to therapy once a week is gonna like solve like police brutality for some folks. So I think that we have to stay focused on those things while also making it mental health resources more accessible. But also, I want to say fund ancestral traditions and orgs, grassroots orgs that are committed to like healing circles that remain accountable and hold people in that way, in that radical way, and also fund like harm reduction projects too. So I think when we talk about mental health, a lot of folks maybe think of like, access to your medication, access to therapy and psychiatrists and all of those things. Super important. Healthcare is a right for everybody. We should all have healthcare. But again, I like I said, I want to also shift a little bit of the focus to some of these like more main targets that I want to keep on fighting against and keep on wanting to abolish and dismantle. So, yeah.
Love the policy approach on it and the macro scale approach, like funding therapists of color, right? And then also funding grassroots organizations that allow and give resources for different types of healing there's different cultures that require that have different acts of healing. Just like Haifa said earlier, like in Sudan, they have different priorities. They still work really hard, but also it's not a shameful thing to go out with your friends. And so I really appreciate that policy and like macro view on mental health. And Haifa, what do you think needs to be done to help create these opportunities for those who need it the most?
So my view of it comes from because I'm like 19 and I'm like kind of fresh out of high school, and the thing that I do for like work, I want to be a psychiatrist and stuff. So like the way that I view it is very much of lack of resources and lack of BIPOC and LGBTQ plus professionals in those spaces. I think that the need for mental health resources in marginalized communities comes from generational trauma that they face every single day, and just unknown problems that they may face. Like they don't even know that they're like that's happening to them because they don't talk about this. In many marginalized groups, mental illness and mental health is a taboo. The lack of mental health resources in marginalized communities is because I think a lot of people in those communities don't know that they have it, or they just don't want to talk about it. You know, they bring it up to their parents, and they're more like just either yelled at or, oh, you're like, for me, and this is as a Muslim and as an immigrant, it's, oh, just go pray on it, you know, or oh no, you're fine, like, you know, just go get some rest. You know, it's because people don't know what mental illnesses look like and what mental health also looks like. I think one of the ways that we can address this, like Érica and Shaylin said, is funding mental health resources in the local level, like in schools, pushing for more psychologists and counselors in the schools, and also funding local organizations that focus on mental health. There's a lot. I think the one thing I learned is there's so many mental health resources that just people don't know about them because there's not enough funding to them. Another thing is, again, what you guys said is having LGBTQ and BIPOC professionals in those spaces. When you see someone that looks like you, when you're you feel more heard, and you feel like that person can connect with me more. And for personal experience, that helps 10 times more. And I think another thing is encouraging marginalized youth to be part of that field. Telling them like, hey, do you want to help out? Like, you want to be part of the fight to, you know, help with mental health and mental illnesses? What about like thinking about becoming a counselor or a psychiatrist, and just also addressing drug problems and you know, just like rehabilitation centers is very, very important, because I think a lot of those communities do face a lot drug addiction, alcoholism, but they don't have the resources to go to rehab, and it's very expensive as well. It's unaffordable. So also making these things affordable for those communities.
Absolutely. And thank you both so much for all of those awesome ideas. I completely agree that supporting grassroots organization and raising awareness, because I think Érica and Haifa both mentioned that if you don't know that a resource is there, you can't take advantage of it and you can't utilize it. So every time that we as professionals see resources that we think could be helpful, then that's something that we need to make sure that we share and we try to get the word out there, because the more people that know about something, the more that they can make a difference, and it really might help people. But also looking at all of these issues that we're discussing today from that macro, meso, and micro lens, that they're all connected. There's layers to these issues, and just focusing on one little part is doing a disservice, because it's just kind of putting a Band-Aid on one area while not addressing the whole issue. And so, you know, it's okay to just focus on one part as long as we still acknowledge and keep working towards addressing the whole picture as well, for sure. And it can't be done alone. We all have to remember that we have to hold each other accountable, and we have to make sure that we're all being conscious of working towards these goals every single day. Could you both share a little bit how you feel that advocates can better engage community members and other professionals in ways to make meaningful changes within their sphere of influence from your perspectives? And whoever would like to go first is fine.
I definitely want to give Haifa one of the opportunities. You want to go first? I can't see you.
Thank you. From personal experience, advocates can engage their community members by actively working with them to see what the problem they tend to face are and addressing that specifically. Like every community, even like one city can be very different than another city and what that community like faces in the sense of like issues. And so I think maybe even like going door to door is like what we did. We went like door to door and we asked like, what are some issues you face in the pandemic? And then one of them was food poverty. A lot of them couldn't afford to go buy meals for their kids because a lot of them lost jobs. A lot of them didn't have enough money to provide healthy meals. And so I like seeing what the community actually needs and not what you think they need, because that is two big different things. I think a lot of like when people like start organizations and want to help out, they're like, oh well, the community needs this, when it's it could be, yeah, they might need it, but that's not the number one priority. And so I think working with that, and I think also the biggest thing that helped us is showing up to city council meetings, though it is a system of oppression. I think when we went, it was very much a way to let them know like, hey, we're here, we're doing this. So they're not like shutting us down or putting infractions on us or anything like that. And so when we started going to city council meetings and working on the local government level, we started seeing like we were able to reach out more people and create more change. Another thing is advocates need to directly work with local communities and involving them with nonprofits, because there's a lot of nonprofits, but no one knows about them. I think like every city, there's so many nonprofits that do so many different things, but like when you ask the person like, oh, well, do you know that this one, helps out with food pantries? Like, oh, I didn't even know, and they might need it. So connecting the community with nonprofit organizations in your cities and your towns is very, very helpful. And also like working with religious groups, because I think working with like the churches and the mosques and the synagogues and other religious groups, you're able to reach a way more like audience of immigrants, an audience of people of color. So I think those are the biggest things that helped us out with our local work and involving the community in that.
Thank you. It sounds like you guys are doing amazing work in the community and connecting. And I think those are great ideas on how we can all connect with our community. And I wanted to emphasize when you said what the community needs versus what you think that they need. Super important. And Érica, how do you think that advocates engage with community members and other professionals in ways that make meaningful changes within the sphere of influence?
Yeah, I think it's about meeting people where they're at. So I'll give a great example. I moved into Southeast Side San Antonio community is predominantly working class folks, Black and brown. And coming out to people as non-binary and trans here with both me and my partner is going to be a process. I am a very proud out person, but I also want to meet people where they're at and not just overwhelm and then have like I think there's one thing when I have respect for myself. I honor myself. My neighbors respect me, and they have a lot of love for me and support for me. But I also want to make sure that I'm able to offer information so that it is consumable and people can process it, because it's not going to do any good for me. It's like, hey, I'm Érica, I'm non-binary, I use they, them pronouns. And then be like, what? I want people to get to know me and they can make their own version of how they believe me to be. And then I'm like, I would love to guide you on where I'm at. Before saying, I need you to come here, after not recognizing like all of the other, whether it is like religion, generational trauma, a lot of things that can maybe create barriers to like, it's not acceptance, but like really fully seeing and understanding. And so I think meeting people where they are, meeting community where they are. Another thing I want to say as a queer and community is that sometimes community can be really small. And I mean that as in like interpersonal things can happen, conflict happens, and that's real, different than abuse and harm and violence. Those want to make a really big distinction. But I think it's important to build coalitions and like really make sure that we're focused on getting to where we're going, which is the revolution, which is liberation, which is dismantling a lot of really big oppressive systems that won't work unless we're working alongside each other. That doesn't mean you have to work with people that maybe necessarily you have a rift with, but like working alongside them in a way where you're both honoring your boundaries. Because we have to make the revolution irresistible. We have to make it something enticing. And so to get people to want to engage is, I think, decentering, again, your settler ego, and saying, you know, I'm keeping my boundaries intact, I'm keeping my personhood intact, but I also want to use a language. I mean, as a scholar, sometimes I want to recognize that I'm speaking from a place that may not be accessible to folks in my community, and I want to be mindful of that. And like I said, meet people where they're at. I also really want to say that I'm going to put in the Zoom chat a list of Instagram social media handles that I follow for a lot of information, and that I think that y'all could definitely benefit from engaging with, should that be something that you're interested in. A lot of these people have Patreons and other things you can book in workshops, so I'm going to do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'd really like to give the opportunity to our audience members to be able to ask questions for Haifa and Érica if there's anything that came to mind, or even if it's just something that you'd like to know information about that they've mentioned, just to give them a chance to interact with you. And we also promised both of them that they'd get a chance to talk a little bit more about their agencies if there's anything that they don't feel like that they got to share, and expand on that a little bit. So while our audience is putting some questions into the chat, if there's anything that you would like to expand on as far as your agency work or ways that people can get involved to help support what you're doing, we'd love to hear a little bit more.
So like I said, our group we founded it in October of last year, and it was just everything that happened in the summer, and we saw like a need for social and racial justice in trade itself. And I think the biggest thing in our community that we saw was the youth wanted to help, but we just didn't go and how to do it. So we wanted to create a space where youth can come together and address issues that they see in their own communities. So one of the biggest things that we were doing is we had like a winter drive where we had clothes, we made fresh meals, and just gave for the homeless, and we gave them like toothbrushes, toilet paper, shampoos, conditioners, just things that they may need. We've also been working to have a 24/7 running food pantry in our downtown area, and so that's because we also, again, like I brought up, food poverty is a big thing in our area with the pandemic. A lot of families were struggling to put food on the table, and so we saw that if you have a 24/7 running pantry with a fridge, you know, they can come in, grab, even if it's a snack, even if, you know, if they wanted some milk, just come in and grab it any time of the day. And the biggest project that we're working on right now is to promote more mental health resources in our schools, and also we're with the goal, so it's mental health resources, and with that, we're slowly trying to defund and get rid of SROs in our schools, because we're basically saying that you can't have a true mental health, like, safe space in your school, an educating safe space, when there's a police car running in the, like police car sitting in the middle of the school. And so our biggest thing is, eradicating SROs and funding mental health resources in our schools, in our district as a whole, sorry. I'm going to put our Instagram handle in the chat. That's the best way that you can reach out to us, and even to me. So if you have any questions, any comments, you want to talk, I'm always here. So I'm just going to put it in the chat box.
Thank you. Absolutely. Please do. Érica, would you like to share next?
Yes. So first of all, thank you all for listening. A lot of the things I say, like I said, are probably pretty out there, and really super thankful to be here with Haifa. Everything Haifa had to offer is just, 19 years old. Wow, you're incredible. And I believe in youth. I believe we have a youth leadership program that I facilitate called Bright Futures of Pride. It's something that we really just want to engage youth between the ages of 12 to 18 in Texas, online, virtually right now, of course, with the pandemic. And we also have our group therapy for LGBTQ BIPOC youth, 18 to 24. It's a 8-week cycle. So it's a program that has been funded, and we're hoping to keep funding it because, like we said, we want to make this accessible. We also want to create conscious community spaces for that healing to happen. And I'll also put my the organization Pride Center Instagram in the chat, and I will put my email because I'm always more than happy to be of service to folks who want to say, hey, you said some things and I just want to know where you're coming from. And yeah, also excited to hear any questions or feedback is good too.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's truly been an honor to get to speak with both of you. All of the guests that we had today were just incredible, and we as an organization, and I personally am just so excited about all of the work that you're all doing, and your passion and your goals are just very inspiring. And I've loved hearing everything that you've all had to talk about. Those Instagram handles are in the chat for everyone if you'd like to follow our guests, and anyone else that would like to contact. I don't see any questions yet. So if there's no questions, then I think that we're going to wrap up early in a couple of minutes. But we are so grateful for everyone that has joined us today. As professionals who support youth development and empowerment, it's our ethical and professional mandate to prioritize equity and justice in our actions and our goals and in our practice. And here at APYD, our mission is to raise awareness of best practices and most effective strategies to equip young people to be leaders and change makers in their community. And it's essential for all of us to remember that just gaining knowledge is not enough. We have to put action behind our new insight. We have to hold each other accountable and be actively anti-racist and prioritize social justice and youth development, as was outlined by Dr. Ali earlier in our program today. As we move forward, we have to continue to push ourselves to maintain a hunger and a passion, and to allow it to motivate us to create meaningful changes in our society. We're so thankful for everyone who has made our event possible today, including our staff, our guest speakers, and all of you who joined us today live, and those who'll be watching this as a recording. We're so thankful to have these partnerships with all of you who are working to make a difference with young people in your spheres of influence. And I would like to announce the winners of our little giveaway that we did today. First, the winner of the Be the Change tote bag is, and I sincerely apologize if I mispronounced your name, Stuti Jarkandi has won the tote bag. Congratulations. And then the $25 Target gift card was won by Hanifa Muhammad. Congratulations to both of you. And you'll receive an email from APYD at SysG Group with instructions on how to claim your prize. Please remember that as part of our conference today, by registering, you have access to the information and resources in our exhibit hall for 1 year after today. So if you didn't have a chance to investigate all of that great information today as much as you would have liked to, you can continue to go back there for 1 year after today, and we will also have a posting of our full conference available to you to rewatch, and we hope that you will. So please take advantage of those connections moving forward. We hope that you will follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Ideas for Youth, which we'll have in the chat as well, or find us on Facebook at the Alliance for Positive Youth Development for access to resources and so that you can join us for future events. Thank you again all so much for your time, and we sincerely look forward to seeing how each of you puts our learning today into action. Thank you.